All right, welcome in everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Definitely always up for a good mystery.
Well, today's case has mystery in spades. We're looking into the murder of Kelly Brennan. And get this, it involves a friend's dream that supposedly revealed the location of the body before it was even found.
Hmm. Dreams and murder mysteries. That's an interesting combination.
Yeah, it's a bit out there.
Uh-huh.
The source we're using for this is an article called Unraveling the Mystery of Kelly Brennan's Murder, a case of dreams, visions, and tragic loss.
So, where do we start with this?
Let's introduce Kelly Brennan first. Who was she? Well, back in 2010, she was a 46-year-old nurse living in Indialantic, Florida.
Oh, Florida. Okay.
And from what the article describes, she sounds like she was a really vibrant person. Beautiful, glamorous, the kind of person who really left a mark on people.
Someone you wouldn't forget.
Exactly. And on top of that, she was incredibly dedicated to her patients. She was even battling multiple sclerosis, but still continued to work. Shows you what kind of person she was.
Yeah, that's really impressive. That definitely speaks to her strength and character.
Right, so you can imagine how jarring it was when she suddenly disappeared in the early morning hours of February 15th, 2010.
Had to be a shock, especially if that wasn't like her at all.
It wasn't. Everyone close to her family, friends, they all knew this was completely out of character. They reported her missing right away.
I guess in these cases, the immediate sense that something is wrong can be really important, can't it?
It can be, and sadly, it seems their instincts were right on the money. Just a day later, a sheriff's helicopter found her body.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It was in the woods near a place called Mark's Landing. The cause of death was severe head trauma, suggesting a pretty violent attack, possibly even fueled by rage.
So, right away, things take a darker turn. It's no longer a missing person case, but a potential homicide. Were there any suspects? Anyone who stood out right away?
This is where the case takes a strange, unexpected turn. A woman named Sheila Trot, who had been friends with Kelly, came forward with a rather chilling claim.
Okay, now wait a minute. It's pretty common for people to come forward with information after something like this happens, right? What made Sheila Trot stand out?
It was all about a dream. She claimed she had this really vivid dream the night before Kelly's body was found. In this dream, she saw Kelly arguing with someone, and she felt, in the dream, that Kelly was in danger.
I mean, dreams can be strange, especially if you're stressed or grieving. But did this dream have any details that actually linked it to the crime?
Here's the kicker. Sheila's dream actually included the location of Mark's Landing, the exact place where Kelly's body was found.
Whoa. Okay, that changes things. I mean, if you were investigating this case, how would you even approach something like that? Is it some kind of premonition, a crazy coincidence, or something else entirely?
It really throws you for a loop, doesn't it? At first, the police didn't consider Sheila a suspect, but that dream with those details definitely put her on their radar.
Rightfully so, I'd say. Even if she had nothing to do with it, that timing, those specific details, that would raise red flags for any investigator.
Did they look into her relationship with Kelly at all?
They did, and it turns out their friendship was pretty complicated. There was jealousy, secrets. It wasn't a simple friendship at all. And adding to that, Sheila was married to a guy named Daniel, who was, according to the article, quite attention-seeking and ambitious. Seems like their marriage was kind of rocky, too.
So we've got a possibly volatile marriage, a friendship with some serious baggage, and this dream that seems to foretell the tragedy. Did investigators find any specific instances, conflicts maybe, in Sheila and Kelly's past?
There was one incident that caught their attention. A few years before Kelly's murder, Sheila accused Kelly of spreading rumors about her.
Oh.
Yeah, led to a huge falling out. They didn't even speak for a while. Okay, so there's bad blood there. Shows that Sheila maybe, I don't know, was sensitive about her reputation, maybe even wanted to control how people saw her. And if her marriage was already on shaky ground, well, that adds another layer of complexity.
For sure. And then there's another wrinkle. Both Sheila and Kelly had had affairs. Imagine trying to untangle the web of relationships and motives when something like that comes to light.
Oh, man. Talk about a tangled mess. Affairs can stir up some intense emotions, right? Betrayal, resentment, maybe even a desire for revenge. Investigators would have their work cut out for them, figuring out if any of that could have led to something dangerous.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And all of this is playing out against the backdrop of that unsettling dream. It really makes you wonder, was Sheila's dream a genuine premonition, or was there something more to it, something more deliberate?
It's a question that takes us down a fascinating, maybe even a little disturbing path. It makes you think about Intuition, the power of the subconscious, the possibility that some people are just drawn to these tragic events.
It's a rabbit hole for sure. We'll keep digging into those questions as we continue our deep dive. Stick with us as we peel back more layers of this case.
So we left off with Sheila Trot's dream, adding this really strange element to the investigation. But a dream, no matter how vivid it is, isn't exactly hard evidence, is it? Did the investigators find anything to back up her claims or maybe prove them wrong?
Well, they definitely started looking into Sheila's past, trying to find any patterns, any behaviors that might shed some light on things. And that's when they found some, well, some pretty interesting information. It seems Sheila had a history of making dramatic claims, kind of seeking attention.
Hold on, a history of seeking attention. Now that's something that needs a closer look. What kind of things are we talking about?
For example, there were times where she seemed to exaggerate illnesses or injuries. There were even stories about her making up stories about being a victim of crimes. Yeah. It's almost like she thrived on being in the spotlight, even if it meant stretching the truth a little or a lot.
That's interesting. It makes you wonder about the psychology behind that, doesn't it? Reminds me of those cases where people insert themselves into tragedies. It's like they need to be seen, to be connected to something big, even if that connection isn't real.
Yeah, like she needed to be part of the story, even a tragic one. But how does that tendency for attention-seeking factor into the investigation? Does it automatically make her a suspect? Or could there be other explanations?
That's the tough part for investigators, isn't it? It's a balancing act. They can't just ignore potentially important information because the person has a history of embellishing. But at the same time, they can't let a good story, a captivating story, overshadow other possibilities or lead them down the wrong path. So, did they find anything else in Sheila's background? Anything that connected her to Kelly, aside from that falling out over the rumors?
Well, besides their friendship, which was already complex, and the shared social circles you get from living in the same town, not really. Nothing concrete that stood out. But the police were in a tough spot. They had this unsettling dream, Sheila's past, and a lot of suspicion. But no physical evidence to connect her to the crime scene. No DNA, fingerprints, no witnesses putting her at Mark's Landing. It was a minefield, legally speaking.
I can imagine the frustration for the investigators. They have these pieces that hint at a motive, but no way to put them together. It makes you think, how much weight can you really put on a dream, especially when you know the person who had it has a history of being, well, less than truthful?
It's a question that's been debated for years. Dreams are so subjective, right?
Yeah.
Open to interpretation. How do you tell the difference between a real premonition, if those even exist, from a made-up story? Or even just a coincidence?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And in this case, it seems like they never really found a good answer. Even with all the suspicion around Sheila, they couldn't find the evidence that would definitively tie her to the murder. They couldn't prove the dream was anything more than a weird coincidence, however strange it might seem.
So it's one of those cases where justice might never be served, even though there are so many questions still hanging in the air.
It does seem that way, and it really highlights that sometimes, even after a thorough investigation, some mysteries just stick around. And for the people involved, not having closure can be really, really tough.
It's heartbreaking to think about Kelly's family and friends. They lost someone they loved so suddenly, in such a violent way, and then to face the possibility that they may never know the full truth.
It doesn't bear thinking about, does it? And we can't forget Sheila Trot either. Whether she was involved or not, she's forever tied to this tragedy. The suspicion will probably always follow her, maybe even more so because there was never a clear resolution.
It's a reminder that even with all the best efforts, some cases just stay open, leaving behind these unanswered questions and lingering doubts that can stay with people for years, even decades.
Absolutely. And it challenges our expectations of what justice and closure look like, doesn't it? We want these investigations to be tidy, with clear answers. But life isn't always like that. Sometimes the ambiguity just stays, and we're left wrestling with the complexity of it all, of human nature, the limits of what we know, and the possibility that some truths will always stay hidden.
It's a sobering thought, for sure. But I think it also underscores how important it is to think critically, to look at things from all sides. We can't just rely on gut feelings or hunches. We have to weigh the evidence, consider bias, and be open to different explanations.
Right. This case, with its mix of the ordinary and the extraordinary, the psychological and the factual, it's a powerful reminder that truth can be a slippery thing. Sometimes the best we can do is acknowledge the limits of what we can know and just accept the uncertainty.
So where does that leave us? We've looked at Sheila's dream, her past, and the roadblocks investigators faced trying to connect her to Kelly's murder. But without that concrete evidence, the case is still a mystery.
It is, and maybe that's what's most unsettling about it. There's this feeling of incompleteness, a desire for answers that we might never get. It's a reminder that sometimes the search for truth is a journey that doesn't have a final destination.
It's a reminder that even now, with all our forensic tools and investigative techniques, some cases just don't have simple answers.
And those are often the cases that stay with us, aren't they? The ones that make us question what we think we know, explore the dark side of human nature, and grapple with the enduring power of mystery.
What do you think, listener? As you've been listening to us break down this case, what parts stood out to you? What conclusions have you come to based on what we've discussed? Do you think Sheila's dream was a real premonition, maybe a fabrication, or just a really bizarre coincidence?
We've laid out the evidence, the inconsistencies, the unanswered questions. Now it's your turn. Think it through, consider the possibilities, and see what you make of it all.
It's a great exercise in critical thinking, and it shows us that even the cases that seem simple on the surface can have hidden depths and twists we don't expect.
The Kelly Brennan case is a perfect example of that. It blends true crime with psychology, intuition, and the limits of what we can understand. And even without clear answers, it's a story that keeps drawing people in.
It encourages us to look deeper, go beyond what's obvious, and accept that there are gray areas where things aren't so black and white.
That's what makes it so compelling, right? This case, with its lack of definitive answers, still manages to captivate and intrigue.
And that feeling, that desire to understand, even when things are unclear, that's what makes us human, isn't it? It's what drives our curiosity and makes us want to find meaning, even in the toughest situations.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So we'll leave you with this. What other mysteries are hiding right under our noses? What unexplained events or connections are waiting to be found? Maybe the most fascinating mysteries aren't in true crime stories, but in our own minds, woven into our everyday lives.
It's wild, right? We've looked at this case from every angle. The shock of Kelly's disappearance, Sheila's dream, their complicated friendship, and the dead ends the investigators hit, even though there was all this suspicion. But we still don't really know what happened. Do you think maybe the investigators could have done anything differently? I mean, with the evidence they had or didn't have?
It's tough to say. You've got this bizarre dream pointing right to where the body was found. But the law needs more than that. It needs proof, hard evidence. It'd be easy to get caught up in the sensational stuff. But investigators, they gotta stick to the facts, to the procedures.
You're right. And in this case, the facts were pretty thin on the ground, weren't they? We know Sheila was never charged with Kelly's murder. But does that mean the case is closed? Or are there still, avenues they could explore even after all this time?
Officially, Kelly's case is still unsolved. But that doesn't mean the search for answers is over. Cold cases, they often get looked at again. Maybe new technology comes along, or new witnesses come forward, people who weren't ready to talk before.
Yeah, that makes sense. Time changes things, doesn't it? People remember things differently. Maybe they change their minds about talking. What kind of technology could help with a case like this, especially with so little physical evidence?
Forensic science has come a long way, especially DNA analysis. They can look at tiny bits of DNA now, stuff they might have missed years ago, and they can compare it to people in databases. There are even new ways to look at old evidence, maybe find clues that weren't obvious before.
So even in these cold cases, there's hope. New science could give us new insights, maybe even lead to answers that people have been waiting for. It's pretty amazing, the dedication of the people who keep looking for justice and how science keeps moving forward. But I want to shift gears for a second. We've talked a lot about the investigation, but what about Sheila Trot herself? What do you think about her as a person in this whole story?
It's hard to judge someone's character, really, especially when we only see a little piece of their life through this one event. But the article definitely paints a complex picture of her, full of contradictions even.
I see what you mean. She seems like someone who wants attention, maybe makes up stories to seem more important, to feel connected to big things. But then there's the dream. Whether it was real or not, it suggests a kind of intuition, a way of seeing things that's hard to ignore. It's like she's in this blurry space between truth and lies. What's real and what's imagined get all mixed up.
Yeah, blurry space. That's a good way to put it. And maybe that's where the real mystery lies, not whether Sheila was involved in Kelly's murder, but in understanding the human mind. What makes someone want to be part of a tragedy? How much do our dreams, our gut feelings, shape how we see the world? Those are questions that go way beyond this case. They get to the heart of who we are.
That's deep. And it brings up something important about true crime. It's not just about the suspense and the drama. It also shows us how complicated people are, how our memories can be unreliable, how hard it can be to tell what's true and what isn't. The Kelly Brennan case, with all its strange twists and turns, it really shines a light on all that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It reminds us that finding the truth isn't always a straight line. It's full of detours and dead ends, unclear evidence, questions that don't have answers. And sometimes the most important thing isn't finding the answer. It's about challenging what we believe, learning more, and never stopping asking questions, even when the answers are hard to find.
We've looked at all the details, the evidence, the possibilities. Now it's your turn, listener. What do you make of it all? Was Sheila's dream a warning? Something she made up? Or just a really freaky coincidence? Was she part of what happened to Kelly? Or just a witness to something she didn't understand?
We've given you the pieces, but how they fit together, what picture they make, that's up to you. Use your judgment. Think about all the sides of the story and see what conclusions you come to.
It's a great way to exercise those critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And it shows us that even in the most confusing cases, there are always deeper layers to uncover.
The Kelly Brennan case is a perfect example of that. It combines true crime, psychology, intuition, the limits of what we know, and even without a clear answer, it's a story that stays with you.
It makes you want to dig deeper, to question everything, to accept that some things will always be a mystery.
That's the beauty of it, right? Even without knowing for sure, we're still drawn to this case. It still makes us think.
And that desire to know, to understand, even when things are uncertain, that's what makes us human. It drives us to learn and to search for meaning, even in the darkest situations.
I couldn't have put it better myself. So, as we wrap up, think about this. What other mysteries are out there? Hidden in plain sight. What strange events or connections are waiting to be discovered? Maybe the most fascinating mysteries aren't in true crime stories. Maybe they're right here in our own minds, part of our everyday lives.
Thanks for coming along on this deep dive with us. It's been a wild ride. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep searching for the truth, wherever it might lead you.